Dr. Lee's been waiting patiently to come in on this.
I'm pleased with your conduct of the Competition Commission idea.
Yes.
This weekend in an article.
And I hope everyone else will back to that, Mr. Cook. I mean, the challenge is that you're an oligopoly. I mean, how do you respond to that?
We're not, which is why we want a Competition Commission to demonstrate it.
Okay, you've been very smooth, not just you personally, but smooth, and I'm expecting the same. I mean, how many of you employ public relations companies to be before coming here? And indeed, if you did any of you share a public relations company?
We certainly didn't employ a public relations company before coming here. I think a couple of things to say.
The
first thing.
What I'm trying to is there is a suspicion, whether it is accurate or not, there is a suspicion that you're a chorus line acting in concert. Okay, in terms of everything you say, and you try to sort of like tease out differences between, we've heard it on e-care and various other things, which then begs the question, why isn't there more competition in the market? Because I look at electricity market share, and for instance, E.ON from 2008, 18%, 2010, 17%, 2012, 17%, Empower 15, 13, 14. There's not much change. So your share of the market is pretty static, which suggests to me that actually, generally speaking, unless there's a huge amount of churn, that actually your customers are pretty static and they're viewing their power companies like they view their banks. Do you think this market is competitive? Because there's so much almost sort of consensus and agreement in terms of timing of bills and when they go up, and I just get a sense this is more monopoly than competition, actually. That's my sense anyway.
Well, I think there are more national supply companies in the UK than there are in any of the other EU 15 countries.
Sure, but your market shares are not changing.
We now have 15 small suppliers, which we didn't have a while ago. If you look at the comparison of UK domestic gas prices compared to the EU 15, we're the second lowest. If you look at the comparison of UK domestic electricity prices, then we are the fourth lowest.
Yes, but your
to be honest, to suggest to a company that has invested, and this includes our generation profits as well as our supply profits, to suggest to a company that has invested £2.9 billion in the UK over the last 5 years and made a profit.
Right, this is not answering my question. Your market share is not changing.
But what I'm trying to...
but if your businesses were truly competitive, if you had, your market share, you would hope, would gradually increase, because that's what tends to happen in a true marketplace. Is not the problem here, I would suggest, is that you're all dealing with gas and electricity, two commodities. You're trying to deliver it along a single pipeline system and a single sort of set of wires and circuits. That actually there is a limit to how much competition in retail will deliver any further price reductions. And so therefore, it would be better for all of us if we got out of you guys sort of competing with each other, in inverted commas, on retail and just got you competing over generation. Would you agree with that?
No, I believe that both generation and retail are competitive.
Have you delivered price sort of savings to customers because of the way in which you run your retail businesses? Because in effect, you're just customer service you're competing on customer service, aren't you? I mean, there isn't much more for you to compete on.
Well, I think
retail.
I think the reality is that the product range, if you like, is relatively limited in the traditionally. Gas and electricity. Obviously, we actually have a lot of other products around home services and telephony and others we'd like to bring into the market to make it more diverse. But the reality is there is a competition there, and in fact, your point about market share variance is, I think certainly in our company, we work extremely hard, and we've been actually recognised 8 years in a row by Uswitch independently for being number one for service, to try and hold on to those customers. And in fact, if I take this outside our sector, and even in the retail space, in the supermarket space, you don't see massive fluctuations in market share, although you do see obviously more diversity of product. So I think it's a fair challenge, and one that we need to inject more diversity of product into our offers, so that there is a perception from customers that they're actually getting a lot of a different experience, not just a better service experience, as in the case of SSE.
Do you have any comments on this?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we've noticed that if everybody, all the other energy companies, the big six, were to charge the same prices that we were able to charge last year, then it would be a £3.7 billion savings. So I'm not entirely sure how all these guys are running their business, but we have invested in very up-to-date technology We employ some very bright people in our trading team, and it sounds like we're managing to beat the professionals here at buying energy at the right price. We're passing those savings on to customers. At the moment, it looks like our energy tariff, which is fixed for 12 months, is £164 a year cheaper, which is about 13 or 14% more than the price rise we've heard. So I think there is a real argument for more competition in the sector, because I think that is the best way to keep everybody on their toes if you've got more competition. But I think the steps that we've seen from Ofgem, who, let's just be clear, they are the people whose responsibility it is to ensure a competitive and well-functioning market. They've almost entirely failed during our lifetime, which is just 4 years. We are amongst the fastest growing of the independent energy companies. We've gone from a standing start to just over 0.5% market share in the last 4 years. But they haven't done nearly enough. And in this review, the latest retail market reform or retail market review that they've announced, which was headlined as the biggest shake-up to the energy market since deregulation, there's almost nothing that will address the concentration that the big six enjoy and their ex-monopoly position. Where you look at market shares, one of the things you should look at is the regional market share. So each one of the big electricity companies came from a region. Their regional market share are huge, and with British Gas, their concentration in the gas market is enormous. And that's one of the big problems that we haven't yet to deal with.
Yeah, just one final question. Return on capital. What is an acceptable level of return on capital, do you think? And in comparison the UK with Europe, is there much difference between the two? I mean, when you're investing, you're talking about all this investment you're making, what sort of return are you looking for on that capital, and how does that compare to your other European operations?
Well, I think if you're looking at the return on capital on the upstream generation business, that's a capital intensive business. It's sort of, the return on capital in this country has been comparable to that required in other Western European
over what
countries.
Period of time?
Over the last 5-10 years. So when we look at it internally, the required return for the UK is similar to that for, let's say, Germany or Sweden or Holland. But I must say, if I read Dieter Helm's commentary on the Labour Party policy over the weekend, and I have to say I agreed with that, where Dieter Helm said, at a stroke, the announcement of a price freeze has increased, these aren't exactly his words, the cost of capital, which at a stroke has increased the long-term costs of electricity and gas supply for customers in this country.
How does that compare to the other countries, though? I'm trying to get some sense of whether you're getting a higher return on capital or expected in the British market as it's currently structured than you would, say, in the French market or the German market or elsewhere. They've been quite, I think volatile is the right word. So if you look in Germany, for example, at the moment, the gas and the gas-fired power stations are really, really suffering, and therefore, in fact, our youngest gas-fired power station, most efficient gas-fired power station, was for quite some period just not running. So that demonstrates a zero return on capital. It's now got a capacity contract, so it's doing better than that, but it's not been a...
I think the reality is that there are some stations, for example in Germany, some power stations which are being mothballed. That hasn't yet happened, at least as far as our portfolio is concerned in the UK. However, the fact remains that I've talked about, for example, Pembroke, expenditure of more than £1 billion, one of the largest and most efficient gas-fired power stations in Europe, and we have real concerns about its profitability into 2014.
I find this bemusing. I mean, you need energy to exist on Earth, and the number of people on Earth is increasing, and their energy footprint is increasing because we're using electric devices or whatever. And yet you're telling me that you're not getting a great return on your generation. I mean, how have we arrived at this stage? I mean, I would have thought that just building an electricity generating plant of whatever kind should actually, because there's a captive audience, we can't do without it. It's not like I can suddenly give up eating honey because the price has gone up and I can eat something else. gas is gas and electricity is electricity.
Certain parts of our generation, I mean, clearly the coal-fired power stations have been more profitable, and there's been extent to which, for example, because of the prevalence of shale gas in the US, raw material coal prices have dropped, and so coal stations have been more profitable, and clearly, as Mr. Cocker said, some of the nuclear stations have been very profitable, where they have very low input costs. I can only talk for npower, where our portfolio is very much skewed towards gas-fired power stations, and where the outlook is pretty bleak.
Because, I mean, I guess if governments continue to go down the energy efficiency route and really went heavily on saving energy, it's going to screw your businesses, isn't it, on this road? Because if you're working with if apparently you're working on such narrow margins that you're mothballing in Germany, an economy which incidentally is growing, it does strike me that if we actually went down the path of creating a really energy efficient nation, you're screwed.
Well, over the longer term, there is clearly a challenge to that generation business. As E.ON, we are also investing very heavily in energy efficiency, and you maybe know a few weeks ago we acquired Matrix, an energy management company in Glasgow and Manchester, which works with companies both in the UK and overseas to manage their energy consumption and can achieve some quite significant energy savings. So, you know, we see that as a trend, and therefore are pushing our business in that direction.
Thank you very much, Chairman.